Tonight I want to look at this scripture, and this is something Rick Joyner has been talking about lately. He gives, if you sign up for his emails, he has like a word of the week newsletter, and his focus has been on Revelation. And right off the bat, I found it interesting what he said, because for a long time, because Revelation does have some crazy stuff in there, right? I mean, it has some apocalyptic end time, antichrist, and all this. And so every time we heard Revelation, we think end times, we think of all those things. And as we should. However, it's very interesting. He pointed out how the book of Revelation actually starts and what it's really all about. In Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, it says, the revelation of Jesus Christ. I think that's pretty powerful. In the midst of everything you read, that book is the revelation of Christ. Everything continues to point to Christ, to salvation. Even when you're reading about the churches, even when you're reading about the Antichrist, when you're reading about the dragon and the horror and all the signs and the stars, and it's all revealing Christ. That was interesting. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Which God gave unto him, this revelation, to show unto his servants. That's key too. So it's a revelation of Christ given to show his servants. One thing that tells you that means we can understand.
Hard to show if you don't read it, though, ain't it?
What's that?
Hard to show it if you don't read it, though, isn't it?
It's hard to show it if you don't read it. That's right. That's right.
They live in that, and they won't read it.
And it tells us that we can understand the revelation that God has given.
Amen.
And it says, to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bear record of the word of God and of the testimony, here we go again, of the testimony of Jesus Christ, and of all things that he saw. Blessed is he that readeth.
That's what I like right there.
There you go.
Yeah.
And they that bear or hear these words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. What's really cool about that is, again, it's given for a purpose. It's given for a reason. It's given to us to reveal Christ throughout all eternity. To reveal Christ even in the apocalyptic times. To reveal Christ in end time events. It still is given to show us, to reveal to us, so that we can understand that these things must come to pass. I don't know, I just think that's so cool. It's like a light bulb. It's like, yeah. Because here's one thing that does, and this is kind of what we've been on too, is it takes all that scary stuff and it makes it not so scary.
Right.
Because like you said, some people, well, we don't want to read that because it's scary. We don't understand it. Well, we're told in the Word that it's a revelation of Christ, so if we can get close to Him, it's given for us to understand. And it's not meant to be scary because it's representative or a revelation of the light and not darkness. And one thing, studies have shown that, and when you hear it, you'll go, well, that sounds right, even though we've never done the study. But they say that you take a God-fearing, great person, okay, that eschews evil and just, lives a Christian lifestyle, but they apply themselves to studying evil. over a period of time, they will potentially, they will start showing attributes
they'll take it on.
of darkness. Or their mindset will become negative and darker. They won't have this brighter outlook because they fed themselves. But if you if you focus on the light, then all of a sudden things become light.
I'll say something. There's no difference.
Well, it depends on how long, because Brenda wants to go real bad.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, there was just, I heard this on the radio not too long ago, that there was this guy, and I don't even remember what his name was, but he had decided that for 1 year, he was not going to pray, he was not going to read the Bible, he was not going to go to church, was going to have nothing to do with God. And at the end of that year, he didn't believe in God anymore.
I believe it.
So that just showed him.
I believe it.
Yeah.
What's amazing about that was,
Don't go too long because Greg wants to talk.
I was listening to Moody on my way back from Anderson on Monday, and David Jeremiah was on there, and he was talking about the modern day atheist, how the atheist movement has changed over the years, and how it's became more hate driven towards any religion rather than just being passive. We just don't believe anything, go mind your own business. They're more hate driven now. But he goes throughout history and is naming one prominent atheist after another that spent years in atheism, outside of guys like C.S. Lewis, that wound up becoming Christians. That, I mean, when they finally really sat down and took a look at everything, atheism made no sense to them.
Yeah. Josh, who was it? Lee Strobel.
Yeah,
Lee Strobel
another
is
guy.
a perfect example of that. He was an atheist, and so he decided to study. Is there a God? Was there a Jesus? You know, he was an academic. He was willing to take that study on. And he said there's actually a video. It's called A Case for Christ. I think it is. He has a case for faith and a case for Christ, but I think it's a case for Christ, where he shares his story of where he started, and now through his study, he proved, basically God proved himself to him, and now he uses what he knew to fight against all of that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's amazing how those guys. It's amazing how those guys started filling their eyes and their ears with faith and came to the faith.
Sure.
And then you've had people in the faith who started turning their eyes from it and then winded up rejecting
Well, that's
it
what the
altogether.
scripture says. You know, I think it was Peter, right? He says, "Think on these things. Things are praiseworthy."
What I was going to say is,
You know,
not
think
very long.
about those things.
The thing about it is we're in a warfare. There's nothing wrong with studying your enemy. Nothing.
Right.
And God gives you all the attributes of the enemy. And when you're studying that, you got to watch yourself so you don't go too far and get off into things that you shouldn't ought to study, because you can get too much. Like Perry said, Perry Stone said, we preached on the devil so long he showed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
He
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
He started flipping on lights and doing stupid stuff, tearing our equipment out, and he's like, we quit doing that for a while. And the guy said, you might want to not do that so much, you know.
Yeah.
But it's really simple. You just got to, in that study, what you're doing today, last day stuff, you can get off in a bunch of places, and there's nothing wrong with studying things too, because a lot of the physical, worldly things tie into the spiritual things of where you're at in prophecy. But you got to watch where you get off into these trails. Like you said, there's so much going on. You just kind of waiting for things to click. But there's nothing wrong with studying your enemy, as long as you got God behind you and you're not off. Next thing you know, you're like Aleister Crowley and you're in a room and you got a candle. You know what I mean? And that's where it goes. Like you said, you don't never think you're going to get there or wherever, but when you start getting off the track and off of God's good and God's got the plan, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with studying your enemy, because when you see them things happen, you're like, oh, yeah, I know what that is.
Mhm.
You don't have to get cracked in the head 50 times like I do. You can say, I know what that is. I studied on this. Ain't doing that. I know
Well,
what that
and
means.
that's the thing. Like you take a football team, getting ready for Super Bowl Sunday. If a team's study the team they're playing,
Yeah, that's must.
right?
Yeah.
They watch film.
Yeah.
They study their players. They study what the other team does. But they don't spend so much time on the other team that they don't even get their own game
Right.
plan together.
Yeah.
They spend more time on their game plan than they do the other teams. But they do watch what the other team is doing so that they're prepared.
Here's your strong points. Here's the weak points.
Exactly.
Here we go. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's build off that.
And so there is a balance to it all. But I think that was so cool the way. And if you want to get those email updates, you can go to rickjoyner.com or morningstarministry.org or something like that. You can sign up for these. He's spending a lot of time kind of walking through Revelation. But it's just right off the bat. I've never seen it that way before. Right off the bat. It's not the revelation of the Antichrist. It's not the revelation of the apocalypse. It's not the revelation of the end of the world. It's not the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
The revelation of Jesus Christ. So as we read through all that, again, it's all revealed through
Yeah.
Christ. Which tells us, I got this. That's what God says. God says, I got this.
That's exciting, man.
It is exciting. Because here's one thing that's so exciting about it. And I don't want to keep just beating this, but man, it's exciting that to have this, to walk in the identity of whom God created you to be, and then walk with no fear. Walk with no fear. That what I do can't be stopped unless God stops it. The only ways it can mess up is you mess yourself up, or God says, stop. I don't want it to happen like this anymore. I want you to do this. And if God's doing that, that's what you want anyway.
That's right.
So technically, really, the only one that can stop greatness in your life is you.
He'll make it work out. All things work together for the good of Christ Jesus. So,
Exactly. So even things that seem bad, things that seem difficult, things that seem hard, those things that where we go, oh my God, why is this happening? It's all meant for your good. He knows exactly what He's doing. He knows exactly what He's taking you through. And we know, and I guarantee every single person in this room can testify to the fact that once you've went through something, you have that aha moment down the road. Where all of a sudden, one thing happens or another thing happens or something inside of you clicks and you go, that's why.
and a lot of times you don't ever go, oh, I knew it was going to be that way. It's
Right, oh
I
yeah.
never would have figured that out.
And most of the
That's
time,
way it is with God.
it blows you away sometimes.
Yeah, like, how'd that work out?
Sometimes it just blows you away. Let me share this with you. I love what God is doing, and I don't. Everything that I talk about that God is doing in my life, I share it because I hope that it inspires people to realize that He can do great things in their life too. So that's why I share some of these stories. Sometimes I hesitate to share things because I don't want to come off the wrong way, but it's like this, we talk about this super lady that's running for, okay? So crazy the way God networks. You guys know that I like John Maxwell, and I started this certification process for coaching and consulting and speaking and things of that nature. And there's a friend that I met through Luke Messer's campaign back a couple of years ago. We start, we're talking, texting, just what's going on, things like that. We keep each other up on what's going on. And he mentions his girlfriend interning for a group called Hathaway Strategies. Okay? So I'm thinking, Hathaway Strategies, I recognize that name. And of course, when it's called Hathaway Strategies, it's some kind of consulting firm. And I knew it had something to do with politics. I thought, that's the kind of stuff I want to do. That's a whole branch of what I want to do, is consulting governments and in the political arena. And so then I knew I recognized the name Hathaway. So anyways, long story short, it was this lady, her name is Anne Hathaway. And she had big-time national connections, blah, 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 the White House,
That's the lady on the hill.
things like that. What's that?
That's the lady on the hill.
There you go, there you go. That's who it was. That's who it was. That's where I recognized that too.
Yeah.
So,
I had to throw that in as a chance to
yeah, right? So
Yeah.
she's in India and she starts this consulting firm. So I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to drop an email and say, look, this is who I am. Maybe there's room for me on your team. This is what I do. This is who I know. I just tried to make some relational connections through naming a few people that I'm connected with that I knew they would be connected with also. Made a few phone calls, blah, blah, blah. And so I get an email back, sure, love to meet you when you're going to be here. So we set it up. I go down into their office and talk to the vice president, just share who I am, what I do. We're just trying to network, trying to see how we can help each other. And he mentions, and I just shared that I was concerned about the education of the state, not having a solid candidate, things of that nature. And he said, I can't say anything. He said, but there's an announcement getting ready to come out in a couple of days. We're working with this person. And I'm like, okay, good. And he shares some of the background that she had, her resume, if you will. And I was like, oh, that's good. That sounds good. A few days later, I find out who it is, and she's right up here in Yorktown. Right? I mean, and so then I'm running for office, having this children, and I'm thinking, dude, I'm going to call her because it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. And she graduated from Newcastle High School. And so, so I'm making this connection here, not only with her, but because of the connection with her, it's fortifying my connection with Hathaway Strategies and the opportunity to maybe do something there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's these dots that are connecting that I had no clue. No clue. No clue. I'm just walking the path. I remember a few years ago, I spoke on this message, and I felt that it was a prophetic message to God's people that would grasp hold of it. And even at that time, I was trying to grasp it myself. Yeah, I didn't have it. I was still trying to grasp it. But it was all about, because a lot of times we have these things we love to do and we feel that we can do it, but we're like, where's the resources? I mean, who was it? Was it Gideon, that was hiding and said, man, I can't do that. I'm the least of my family. My family's the least of everybody. I mean, I'm at the bottom of the... And basically what he said is, I don't have any resources. You're telling me, mighty man of valor, you want me to... I can't do it, And so, but this revelation that seems so simple, but it's so hard to grasp, that when we're on the path God has us walking, that along the path there are wells of resources to draw from. But you'll never be able to draw from those resources until you show up at the well. So what that means is you have to walk the path. And sometimes the path might be difficult from here to there. Sometimes it might be smooth. Sometimes it may be up. Sometimes it may be down. But whatever the case, it's the path that you have to walk to get to the well, to draw from the resources that God has provision for you in that moment. Because what happens is when you arrive in that moment, He refreshes you from the journey, everything you gave up, the times you've been mentally wore out, physically wore out, spiritually wore out on this journey. You're going, you're going, you're going. You arrive at the well. He gives you fulfillment for their past journey, and then He gives you the resources you need for your onward journey. But you got to show up at the well. That's the key. And that's where no one can coach that in you. Right. No one can preach that in you. No one can give that to you. You have to get it. It's like in Solomon, you know, I think it was Solomon, you know, in all you're getting, get understanding. Seek wisdom.
It is there.
It's there. You just have to get it. And there's a struggle to get it. It's putting yourself out there before God. It's falling on your face a few times. It's getting humbled. It's picking yourself back up. It's just refusing to quit. Never, ever, ever, ever give up. It's refusing to quit. If you just simply be stubborn enough not to quit, you'll get to the well.
Do you feel like after you've been to the well, though, you know you're getting to the next well? The wells get easier. Wherever the journey goes might be harder, but you know you're getting to the next well.
And then it goes to what we talked about last week. Those who remember last week, that one leap of faith, that one just where you arrive at the edge of the cliff and God's saying, walk forward because there's a bridge there and you don't see a bridge because you already been to that well, you went to the next well. It's like David said, I've slayed the bear, I've slayed the lion, the giant's going to be just like that. Yeah. He said, you know, David, and I mean, what he's saying here is, I didn't know that God was preparing me for a giant. I was just doing my job.
Oh, that's a lot right there. Yeah.
I was just doing what I knew to do when I knew to do it. This was my flock. This was my responsibility. A bear comes, I take care of it. A lion comes, I take care of it. I was just doing my job. What was he doing? He was walking the path. He was walking the path. And then all of a sudden, Goliath shows up. David comes into the camp. Wasn't called to the camp the first time. I mean, he wasn't called to be the warrior. He wasn't called to go out with them when they went out to fight. He wasn't on the scene. He was still just doing what he knew to do, watching the sheep. It wasn't until Dad said, hey, I got something for you to do.
That's a good lesson.
That's that strategic moment.
Time's coming.
That's that strategic moment that can happen. And that's that little email that I shot to Hathaway Strategies, not knowing who was going to read it or how it was going to get there. Just, let's give it a shot. Right. Didn't know how it was going to circle back around. That's that David moment where Dad says, go feed your brothers. So he's just going to feed his brothers. He's not going to fight. He wasn't going to fight. He was just going to feed his brothers. But when he arrived on the scene, he found a well. When he arrived on the scene, he discovered, this is my moment. And there was his well. And when he drew from the well, it refreshed his journey up to this point. He said, that's what that lion was for. That's what that bear was for. In that moment, he realized, I've been trained for this.
Yeah, he knew there was a God.
And then that's where he said, is there not a cause? Yeah. He draws from the well so he can go forward.
And the lion and the bear, neither one of them were parties.
He knew he couldn't kill him.
Neither one of them were parties. It was a test. It was something that he had to fight, something hard that he needed to do. Or at least what we would consider hard. There wasn't a party. He wasn't lounging. He wasn't going and having a fun old time.
Right.
In preparation for this thing that was coming in the future. It was something, it would work.
Yeah. Exactly.
You ever said that relevant? That bear ate that dude. I'm like, I don't want to do nothing with no bear.
There's some little bears out there.
That'd tear your head off. I mean, I think when he knew that he was fighting that, he couldn't kill that bear without God. He couldn't kill that lion without God. And then here he is facing this dude. He's like, not without God. These guys, why are they letting them do that?
Right.
For his cause, why are they letting him talk about God like that? I mean,
See, that's
where me and that. Why are they letting him talk about it?
he realized in that moment he was walking in the Spirit of God, that he knew he couldn't be defeated. He knew in that moment what I'm talking about. That anointing, that power, that presence of God, that I am doing what I'm called to do, and because I am doing it, I can't be stopped.
No matter what nobody says, this guy's getting his head cracked.
Exactly.
He's intimidating the army of God.
Exactly.
These guys haven't experienced enough to try to go do that because they haven't fought the bear. The relationship hadn't deepened with God enough for them to go out and do that. They're scared.
Right. And and to continue this train of thought is some of you, if not all of you, are going to be like those pioneers that rallied the troops. Because David arrives on the scene, he had this understanding, this assurance, I can't be stopped. We are the army of God. We are God's people. This giant cannot do anything to us that God doesn't allow. And that's what he said. I come at you in the name of the Lord. It ain't about my gear. It ain't about what I have, what I've been accustomed. It ain't about anything.
On the bus, I'm getting
it's only about God. And with God, I can do all things because He strengthens me. So He steps out. He goes from the back and steps out to the front where nobody else was wanting to go. He puts his life on the line where nobody else was wanting to do it. He slays the giant through the power of God. He becomes the pioneer of the moment, if you will. Then what happened? Then the troops rallied. Then the troops rallied. Yeah, they were setting back. Yeah, they were scared. Yeah, they hadn't achieved that experience yet. They haven't arrived at that moment where they felt so assured that they couldn't be defeated yet. They just hadn't got there yet. And there's a lot of people like that today. They're trying to do what they know to do. They're trying to live for God. They're trying to do the right things, but they just haven't been infiltrated with that presence and power and that assurity of the Spirit yet. But when you step on the scene, and when you step to the forefront, and when you lead the way, all of a sudden something's going to kick in for them, and you're going to become a catalyst for them to receive what you have.
Right.
Because when that happened, the whole army took off running at the enemy and pursued them until they slayed them.
But I think their leader dropped the ball because he was the example for the army. Others before the leaders of God, they slaughtered tribes. That was twice as big an example.
Sure.
But their leader was scared.
Right.
They didn't see the presence of God on their leader, which should have been.
Right.
Because if David was leading at that time, they know if we got 200 people or 5,000, God shall wrap in the mulberry trees. So it was their leader that didn't have the presence of God for them to go, oh, we can kill these guys.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that came from their leadership.
And that is the importance of leadership.
At that time,
One thing, one of John Maxwell's sayings is everything rises and falls on leadership.
You lead from the back forward, not from the forward.
James said that.
There you go.
Leadership starts in the
It
back.
all starts with the bumper sticker.
Hold the card again.
It all starts with the bumper sticker. But yeah. So, guys, I believe with everything in me that your persistence, your openness to pursue God, your desire that's driving you is going to continue to lead you into great things. And you may not, you don't have the full picture. I get it. I don't have the full picture. But we're one step at a time, one moment at a time. And you don't have to fret and worry. Just live. Live in accordance to the Word. Live in accordance. And when your moment comes, don't back down from it. Because your moment, sometimes, depending on, it all depends on what we're involved in. But your moment is going to challenge you. It's going to test you. And all depending on, and it's going to be different for all of us. But whatever that moment is, it will test you. It'll test your grit. It'll test your mental strength. It'll test your faith. Because you know, okay, if I say this, or if I do this, or if I step out here like this, or I take this action, I know potentially that all these people are going to attack me.
They may never be the same.
In one way or the other.
Yeah.
So in that moment, do you have the assurance that what you're about ready to do or say is backed up by God?
Yeah.
And here's what I guarantee you. Guarantee you. Every time. If it's God, you can do it. And the very thing that you were scared of, you realize it wasn't anything to worry about in the first place.
It's
Because God's got your back.
Yeah.
He's got your back every time. Every time He'll come around the back. One of my first big experiences with this was fairly new on the council. And somebody was trying to do something real quick. And the council was like, yeah, I'll make that motion. Yeah, I'll second it. And everybody aye. And everybody's like aye. And I'm sitting there like, are you kidding me?
We thought it was the Tabernacle of Praise.
Are you kidding me? And so they said, everybody no, say no. And I said, no. And they looked, I said, and it's like they didn't see what was happening,
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was the one that was sticking out. And the person that I just voted no to his idea had been a pretty influential person in the county for many, many years. And I just looked at him. I said, hey, I'm sorry. I said, you just presented this today. And I said, I can't go with it because there's a reason why it happened. I won't go into all that because one, you probably don't care. And two, he's recording it. So, but anyway, you can stop it. No, but what ended up happening though, there was someone in the crowd that was a sheriff at the time that he knew what was going on too. So he left, gathered information, and I just left the meeting, went to church, and didn't worry about it until later that evening. Found out God had my back. He went and gathered information, so when the commissioners went to vote on it, and it would have been a done deal, he stood up and said, wait a second. And he went through his stuff, and it got voted down. And then after that, people were saying, well, Clay actually did the right thing. Clay actually did the right vote. And so that's what I mean. That moment was one of my first preparations to some of the things I'm recently been in.
I feel good too.
It does.
Yeah.
Because God's got your back.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't because I wanted to be somebody.
Right.
It was because, wait a second, guys, we don't want to go this way right now. It was just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But it wasn't popular in that moment. But just taking that stand, God came in, He took care of it all.
We need some people in the Supreme Court.
Right, exactly.
No, exactly.
And then what happens? is you do like Daniel,
Right.
like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They got thrown in the lion's den, they got thrown in the fiery furnace. Then God had their back. They come out, they got promoted. So that's what happens. When you come out from that test, you don't stay where you were at. That's the awesome thing about it. You get promoted. And so you gain faith, you gain confidence, you gain assurance, you gain trust in God. God lifts you up to a higher level. And when you go to a higher level, you have broader influence. If you have broader influence, you have maximum impact in the kingdom. When you have maximum impact in the kingdom, you can fulfill the Great Commission. More souls can be saved. Why? Because you're bringing salvation to the situation. And people will see the light that is in you. And they will see that this was a problem and you showed up on the scene and solved it. How'd you do that? And that opens the door for you to go, well, do you really want to know? Because I'll tell you. It's just like Joseph when he got thrown into prison. All of Egypt was getting ready to go into a famine. They didn't realize it. They were just enjoying their prosperity. Joseph shows up on the scene and says, well, wait a second, King Pharaoh. He said, I can tell you what you're dreaming, man. It's going to be good for a while. But there's a day coming, and I'm telling you, we better prepare. And God showed grace, and Pharaoh believed you. And Joseph began to institute a plan. Now think about this. We read about it, and I'm going to get ready to close. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. We read about it, and we think, man, that's awesome. God really came through. Helped the entire nation. Man, he really used Joseph. That must have felt good. I don't know that it felt so good for Joseph at first. Because you know what he had to do? He had to take people's stuff.
Yeah, he sat in prison for a long time.
Well, right. That's got him there. But when he started implementing the plan of God, he's had to take people's stuff. Now think about it. They're not in a time of famine. They're in a time of prosperity. Everybody has plenty. Everybody's doing fine.
He looks as crazy as Noah does.
And exactly. Joseph shows up on the scene, says, bad times are coming, people. We need to take some of your stuff and store it for you. You think that was easy? I guarantee you that was very difficult. Very difficult.
Wasn't as bad though after he interpreted the dream.
Well,
because the cows.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The people on the inside had an understanding of what was going on.
Yeah.
Everybody else didn't know, didn't believe, hogwash. I mean, look at the way we act now when we see our leaders making certain decisions. We don't even. So we'll throw out comments and blast our mouth and on everywhere, Facebook, the news, to our neighbor, to our friends, and we don't even know what's really happened. That's the situation Joseph was in. The insiders knew what was going on. They knew about the dream. They knew. But here he was trying to get an entire nation of people that was doing good, and he's trying to tell them, these good times are going to end. We need to take some of your corn. We need to take some of your meal. We need to take some of your stuff. And we're going to start storing it. They built like a Social Security system is what they did. So we're going to take it out of your check and we're going to put it over here. Now, the great thing about this situation in Joseph's time was it was orchestrated by God. So they actually didn't spend the grain to pay for other things. So when the famine hit, they had it. And so when the famine hit, that's when God had his back. See, but he had to go through that process. He had to go through that time. And I'm sure he was just like, dude, this ain't nothing compared to the prison.
Or the well.
Exactly. Got thrown down. I mean, you look at his own life.
His own family threw him in the well.
Exactly.
Let him die. That's
so,
crazy.
It took some time, but in the end, God was glorified. Joseph was promoted. And everybody then began to understand. Woodlawn, it's a pretty cool show, football movie. And this guy, he's giving this speech. And he says, you're going to win this game tonight. He said, I guarantee you're going to win this game. And then he brings out the scripture about, some scripture about them winning a battle. And he said, and the scripture says, they will win the battle so that they will know that there is a God in Israel. God wants you to win.
Yeah.
You're going to win so much, you're going to get sick of winning.
Really?
Anybody recognize that?
Yeah, Trump.
That was Trump.
Yeah.
That's what Trump said. He said, we're going to win so much, you're going to get sick of winning.
Yeah.
But anyways, but no, if you stick it out, you are going to win. You're going to win in the end. God will be glorified, and they will know that there is a God. They will know there is a God. But you have to be willing, not just to, we like to think, okay, he'll be with you in the fire. That's one thing. But the real test is going to the fire. You see, they didn't have to go to the fire. They could have just took these bail, they could have bowed, and they wouldn't even have to go to the fire. It wasn't the fire that was the bad part. It was the anticipation of going to the fire.
Fear and intimidation.
That's the real struggle. That's the real fight.
That's the enemy's favorite.
Yeah.
Intimidation
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
fear.
All right, I could go on with that too,
Yeah.
but I have to stop. Talk about that dream my son had where he took the sword and
Yeah.
it was all a cloud. He was afraid of, it wasn't even real. What he was afraid of wasn't even real. Or what was trying